Welcome to the Brandinc PR Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories and strategies of today's most impactful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals. Whether you're building your brand, scaling your business, or just looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Brandinc PR Podcast. I am your host, Brandi Sims, and today I have with me a special guest, Peter Woolfolk. Peter is the president and founder of Communication Strategies. He is also the host of Top 1% Podcast, Public Relations Review. And also, Peter, I didn't add this in here, but I also did a little research on you, sir, as a good interviewer should, by the way. And I saw that you are a Hall of Famer at Richmond.
No.
Are you going to correct that real quick? Because I looked in there and I was like, hold on, Peter, you didn't tell me you were in sports now.
My father and I saw that the same, some way back some years ago. I'm Peter Woolfolk. My father's Peter Woolfolk. And there was a basketball player at Peter Woolfolk. So we don't know how that, he and I, this is at least 15, 20 years ago. So we still have not made that connection. Or somewhere it was a while
this
back,
was 1988.
So we don't know who that linkage is there.
It was a while back.
No.
Okay, so then you've got a serious doppelganger here, not only in just like frame, because they had an image of him in the 80s, but also in name. So you have a whole doppelganger running around breaking records. And I'm like, dang, Peter, what can't you do? Like you, a Hall of Famer, you're a host of your own podcast, top 1% in the world, I believe. I think globally you're ranked, which is amazing.
I had no idea that was going to happen. I actually stumbled across it. They don't send you and notify you. What was happening at the time. I was on my way out I was a guest speaker at a university to talk about some of the artificial intelligence in the podcast. Well, I said, well, let me just look and see if there's anything missing out there that I don't know about or should know about. And as I was going up and down Google, just put the podcast name in there, and all of a sudden there it was. I actually had to read it 3 times just to make sure of what it said. Top 1% of podcasts.
That this is right.
That really shocked me. I'm very, very happy.
It's amazing. Oh, 100%. I know you are. I mean, it's an incredible accomplishment, and it's something that many have not even been able to ever reach or will reach. So, I mean, it's incredible. So congratulations and hats off to you for achieving that. It's amazing. So I want to definitely get into, I have a lot of questions for you, but I know we're going to respect your time, but I got a ton of questions for you. So we'll get right into it. So in our past conversations, you mentioned a lot of your work that really started with the White House, right? And I'm sure there's more to that, but White House is huge, huge. So from the White House to you finding and really founding Communication Strategy, your firm, you've had an amazing record, in public relations. So what motivated you to transition from high profile roles in government and almost even in academia to starting your own PR firm? Like, what was that motivation for you to make that transition?
To the White House. And then now, let me put it like this. I was in Bill Clinton's administration. I was not actually in the White House, but I was one of those people who worked in some of the federal agencies around with a White House appointment. That I was communications director for Assistant Secretary
in that capacity,
of Education. Yeah. But so I'm going to do a real quick thing. I actually got into public relations by accident, quite honestly, some years ago.
Yes.
I used to work for Xerox, and a school board member asked me if I would help them get some media coverage, and somehow or another I connected sales with media and wound up getting some coverage for her. So that helped me, and from a result of that, she asked me to help some of the other school organizations to get some media coverage, and I started to like it. So what happened was I actually wound up talking to a school superintendent, asking me how can I get paid for some of this. He said, well, I want you to put together this program for me so I can determine how some employees think about our students. And I did, and that worked. He gave me a contract for $5,000, and I quit Xerox. Well, my parents looked at me like I was nuts. So anyway, I said, okay, fine, I'll start doing some
Yeah,
things for him.
yeah.
So then I started doing some other things on the side. I did some volunteer work for the society. I don't know, for a few months. And they said, well, since you're in PR, there's a conference we want to send you down to in Louisiana to talk about A, B, C, and D. So I went down there and spoke and talked to some folks down there. I said, oh, by the way, my daughter works in D.C. and she works for the National Education Association. So I went up there, pitched her about maybe getting some business. She has a director of communications in there. He gave me a contract to do A, B, C, and D. Next thing I know, I got a job because, somewhere along, I forget, somewhere along, I'd also gotten into radio. So he said, well, fine, we'd like you to, be our media relations manager. And they were starting a cable TV system. So I wound up being host on that. So I stayed there. I'm not sure how many years there, but wound up talking to a friend of mine. A friend of mine from Capitol Hill called me. He said, Peter, there's an opening for a press secretary on Capitol Hill. I said, I don't know anything about Capitol Hill. He said, well, you know something about public relations? I said, well, yes, I do. And he said, well, just get your ass on up there and talk to the people. So I went up there and, did the best I could at the point. And I said, wait a minute. He was chairman of the education committee. I said, I was in the NEA, Education Association. Let me ask some people, do you know anybody who works for this particular congressman? They said, oh, yeah, we know his chief of staff. So I got on the phone, called her up, said, blah, blah, blah. This. She said, well, come up and see me. I had a job in a week. So now I'm at Congress. I was probably there for about 5 years or so, working, as I said, doing a lot of different things. I'd also had an opportunity to get some TV experience because I bumped into Bob Johnson when he was starting Black Entertainment Television. And he offered me a television show, doing public affairs stuff for nonprofits. That's what it was. So I said, well, I don't know anything about TV. Can I get back to you? I called some people. Can you help me produce a TV show? I said, okay, sure, we'll do it. So I called Bob and said, okay, I'll take it. So now I'm in television.
Yep.
It was called years ago, if you look it up, it's called the Peter Woolfolk Report. So anyway, all those kind of things added up. So when I got to Capitol Hill, the fact that working for the chairman, I could handle all his PR stuff. I could write all these other kinds of things. Well, I was with him for about 2 years when he retired. Because the Capitol Hill is a small group, I was easy enough to get connected to another senior congressman from New York, and I helped him produce his cable TV shows and blah, 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 all these other kinds of things. Well, after another, 3 or 4, whatever years, he retired, so I went on with another lady after that. So after a while, I took a break. And it was somewhere what had happened the first time. Oh, I know what it was. During my time at Capitol Hill, I got a call from the people in Bill Clinton's administration when he was going to run for president the first time. And they said, Peter, look, we heard about you, blah, blah, blah. We'd like for you to come on down here and work for Clinton, so forth. So at the time, I was doing some summer work for the head of the Democratic National Committee. I said, well, I can't do that now because I've already signed on for this. So I passed that up. And plus, I didn't really know who Bill Clinton was at the time. So obviously, he went on to win. I said, uh-oh, I'm pissed now. I said, if he runs the game, I'm going to get in that administration. So, as time went on, I think closer to 4 years up, I went to a press club meeting and they had 2 people there talking about the upcoming election. Somebody, I think it was Bob Dole and Bill Clinton. So when it was over, I went up to the young lady and I said, well, if I were you, I suggest tell Bill Clinton that they need to do A, B, C, and D. She said, well, do you have a resume? I said, I still do. And so in a couple of days, I sent it down to her. Probably within a week, I get a call. They said, can you come down and talk to us? His campaign people in D.C. I did. To make a long story short, I was appointed. I was the communications director for him in the state of Delaware. So I moved up to Delaware. And when I say move, it was just a temporary move because the campaign lasted, 4 months or whatever it was up there. Got myself a little place. And not only, but now I'm also, as part of that, you're getting information out about what Clinton's platform is, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But I'm also now working with the governor, I'm working with the mayor, the lieutenant governor, all these other people. So you learn a lot about press and how to do it. Oh, as a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton came up, Al Gore came up. So I had to work with the Secret Service, the campaign, how to manage all these kind of things, how to be, when people like that come up, they have what they call pools. They don't.
Managing these people,
All
yes.
these people don't follow around. You have one person that's been appointed. I had to appoint pick somebody, so I picked a local lady who had helped me out a lot. All these other kinds of things. Also, what I did learn a lot was, details. Because if you ever work in the Secret Service, my heavens, you talk about details. They ask you a lot of stuff, so you learn details. Same thing with the advanced team, all those other kinds of things. So I'm learning all this stuff. So when the campaign was over, they said, well, I know what it was. I got a chance to go with the inaugural committee. So now I'm working with, I think my assignment was to handle the 14 Western states. That means, what is it, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Alaska, all those states out there. Because if you have dignitaries come in and they want some media coverage, then it's my job to get it for them. So I had to handle that. So anyway,
yes.
When that was over, they asked you, where did you want to work in the administration? Actually, they asked me if I wanted to work in the White House. Well, after coming off of a campaign, I said, I really don't want to do that because it's almost a 7-day-a-week job. Working in a campaign, let me say, is rough work. If you've ever been in a political campaign, it is 7 days a week.
It is.
So
yes, I have.
going
Yeah.
into the White House,
It's a lot of
that's
work.
going to double up. And I said,
Round the clock.
here's the places I like to work. So I got the Department of Education. So that's how my link is the Clinton administration. Yeah, we had to do. I've been through the White House several times. I've gotten to some of those balls where they have I think mine was the king of something or another they have over there. I got the pictures and all those other kinds of things for that. But having said all that, it's really about learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning how to do a lot of things in a short period of time, how to do them precisely, how to do them with accuracy, how to deal with the governors, the senators, and other people that I'm dealing with. What are they looking for? How do you solve problems for these people? How do you get things done? How do you prepare? All those other kinds of things that I learned. And I took all this after the campaign was over and the Clinton administration was over. I wound up doing some consulting work. I went to a consulting firm, and one of the very first people I'm doing consulting work for is the U.S. Surgeon General. So the U.S. Surgeon General says, I want to have and I'm in Washington, D.C. now. And he says, I want to have a press conference. I think he said he wanted to talk something about AIDS, whatever that happened to be. And I said, well, AIDS, people have been talking about this for a long time. And I said, quite honestly, sir, having a press conference on that, I don't think you're going to get a lot of mileage. I know what it was because he only wanted to consider about 5 different states. I said, with all the other things going on here, the attendance is going to be very, very low. So let me suggest this to you. Why don't you tell me the states where you want to reach out to? I will reach out to all the major newspapers and TV folks and so forth and so on in those states to see if they would like to have a conversation directly with you, and we'll hold a press conference by phone. So they can ask you any questions. They say, hey, I like that idea. I said, plus, you can stay right here in your office and handle it. Because one of the things I had learned by traveling around with the assistant secretary is most newspaper people, media people, never, ever get the chance to talk to senior officials. That never happens. So when I called up the cities and so forth and newspaper PR people who on newspapers and the radio, TV folks, would you like to have the opportunity to speak directly to the U.S. Surgeon General? Every one of them just, yep, sign me up. So I had a whole list of them. So when he came on talking about, now you can talk directly to the people who are working for these kind of things. So it's really like problem solving. I'll give you another one. One member of Congress I worked for, he went down to, I think it was Brazil for some sort of climate on the conference. And a lot of U.S. presidents were down there. So I'm saying, and Jim was from New York City. I said, my goodness, how am I going to get coverage for Jim on this thing? Because, they're not going to go talk to Jim. He's part of the, just trailing along. Yeah. Why talk to him? So I called with some of the all news radio stations that I knew up in New York, and I said, "Well, look, Congressman is going to be down in Brazil. If I can, would you like to talk to him directly from Brazil, and we'll handle the cost?" Everyone said, "Oh, absolutely, we want to do that." So I had to work out time arrangements and all these other kinds of things because the lady who oversees environmental issues was with him. Let me know, find a time where we can get him on the phone, and boom. Got the phone calls through. So it's really about one of the things I really learned in the Clinton administration and before that was managing your time, being as precise as you can, know as much as you can about everything that you're involved with, look into details, all those other kinds of things. The other thing I also learned while I'm working at the U.S. Department of Education with the lady who was overseeing this particular section was make sure that any and everybody who's involved in a project is at the table at the same time. Forget all this, Brandon. Okay, fine. We'll give that to John and tell him this is what his part. Okay. That's not all, doesn't always work. Because what we found out is that sometimes the information is inaccurate. It's depending on if you're preparing something for somebody over here, you don't know exactly what they do, and how are you going to tell them this is what their part is? So when I got to and started the firm, one of the things that, well, I'll get to that later on, but those are sort of things that I did learn, and actually how I got to Nashville was as a result of having dated a young lady. As a matter of fact, her roommate or classmate in college was Hillary Clinton. So we went to we went to the White House and all those other kinds of things.
You made the connection
So
there.
she called me one day. I was at a consulting firm. She says, "Well, Fisk University is the president called, and she's looking for somebody to help with some media relations down there." I said, "Well, most universities have a communications people. What's the problem?" She said, "Well, she just doesn't feel comfortable with them, so forth and so on." So I talked to her. She said, "Here's what she wanted me to do." And they just got a pile of money, and they wanted to get some national media coverage. I said, "Fine." I went down there, had a press conference, and not only did we get local coverage, but CNN picked it up, those kinds of things. Well, while I'm down there, I'm listening to the radio station. So when having had radio, and when I say that, I had both a talk show and a jazz show in D.C. for 8 years. I told the president, I said, "You've got a radio station over there, a college radio station, and a very, very important piece of property you have, and it's not being used well. It's a mess, quite honestly. I mean, anybody, seems like any and everybody who wants a radio show, they're on there. They don't know how to handle it. It just sounds awful." And then she said, "Okay, well, fine." So I left and got my check. And probably within 2 weeks, she called me up again. She said, "I'm going to be in D.C. Can we have dinner together?" I said, "Fine." Well, I'm thinking, well, I'll get another contract. So we had dinner. She said, "Oh, by the way, what would it take to get you to come to Fisk?" I said, "Well, I never thought about it, but let me think about that." So I thought, first of all, because I'd always wanted to move or live somewhere other than D.C., but, I thought about Florida and places like that, but, it's too hot down there. I just didn't want to get stuck down there, blah, blah, blah. So it's what, an hour's worth of flight away, so it's not that bad. So I said, "Fine, okay. But if I come down, I'm going to, you're going to have to give me a job as a vice president. I don't want to be the director of communications, PR, none of that sort of stuff. And here is why. Because most of the people or places that I've been to, the director of public relations is under somebody. And that somebody does not fully understand how PR works. So you give it to them, they don't understand. And so it never goes anywhere. It dies right there. So I said, "I want to be a vice president that reports directly to you." She said, "Okay." So that's how that got started. Now I'm moved down here and started working on the radio station. I told them I listened to all the stations first before I made a decision. I know what it was. I said, "I'm going to convert the station to smooth jazz." Because when you think about Nashville, most people think it's only country music. Wrong. Yes, country music is the most visible there. But you've got a shiny, brand new center down there for where the symphony plays down there. Nice, big, shiny place. Gospel music is big down there. Jazz, we've got jazz musicians down there, jazz clubs down there. But nobody knows that. Very few people know that.
Yes.
So she said, "Okay." So I told some, had a meeting with all the staff. I said, some of you guys won't be here, in the next few weeks because we're going to start moving on this thing. And about February, we started smooth jazz with, I don't know, maybe a total of 20 jazz CDs. But the fact is, we started playing them. and the phone calls started coming in. My goodness, what is that? We love this stuff. So I had to find out where am I going to get this music from, because I only have so many CDs. And started calling the local record labels. And I said, well, no, we're all country music here. So but if you want jazz, call here. And so I started calling and writing and so forth. So make a long story short, WFSK now is one of the top jazz stations in the nation. And I'm very, very proud of that. The other thing too is,
yes, you should be.
Well,
you're over here breaking records,
thing, Brandi,
Peter.
is this. One of the things I've learned along the way is that you've got to be very, very comfortable and confident in what you want, who you are, and what you can do, and be able to deliver. I mean, don't just, as we used to say, sell wolf tickets and just make loud noises. If you can do something, do it. If you don't know how to do it, hire somebody that can.
Do it.
And I've done that any number of times. I've been on a contract for a video for the National International Airport here. Well, I can't operate a video camera. I have no idea how to do that. But I know somebody that does.
No.
That's exactly
there you go.
what
That's
matters.
And that's what matters, is somebody that does.
Well,
you can tap in. You know how to delegate it, right?
Here's the other thing.
Instead of trying to encompass all these
One
things.
of the things that I sell is my resume. When I walk into there and people see that, hey, look, you were in the Clinton administration, you worked for this person, you worked for that one, you've had television, we even done satellite downlinks. We learned how to do that while we were at the National Education Association. So I've got all these skills that I'm bringing in here. So, oh my goodness. The other thing I did was hire somebody that has equal amounts of skill, because what happened, it was real great, was Nissan transferred its national headquarters to Nashville. So there are a combination of things. You had people who moved down here with them. But one of the first ladies I brought on she came here because her husband came here. She used to run the news office for the National Public Radio news station in Los Angeles. I've got her on my staff now. So now I'm lining up all these people with all these skills and background and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yes.
The other thing is, you've got to be, as I said, confident in yourself, because here's what I did. I made a decision once I decided to launch the firm was, well, I don't want to just be, handing out cards and try to get business. That's not going to work. I need to find a way to get in the newspaper and in a solid way. So when somebody sees that, they say, wow, Peter Woolfolk, look at that. He must know what the hell he's doing if you got those people. We'll make a long story short. The first thing I did was two things I did. I went to see the presidents of every major PR firm in Nashville. I had my package together. I sure did. I said,
oh, really?
Here I am. I'd like to meet you. Here's this. I've done this. By the way, here's some letters on some other things from people, blah, 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 and so forth. If you have some smaller jobs that you don't think that, you don't want to handle right now, give me a call. And, we can go from there. Well, it happened. But what happened also before that was, I also, two things happened. One young lady I talked to who was not finished, she said, I'm sorry. I also wanted to find out who knew people on some major organizations around town. A friend of mine was on the board of directors of the Nashville Ballet. I said, well, is there any way you can hook this up and, maybe I can talk to him about getting a contract? She said, well, I don't know about all that, but I'll set up so you can have lunch and you take it from there. I said, fine, we'll talk to him and blah, blah, do this, I do. By the way,
take it from there.
Do you have any need? He said, well, not honestly, not so, because, we already have an advertising agency, no more budget for that. So he said, we got a few things you could do, but we just don't have the money in the budget. I said, well, what is that? He said, well, we really want somebody to help with our community outreach, to go out and talk to community organizations and invite them to come in and see the rehearsals at the ballet. He said, would you be willing to do that? I said, so he said, well, so no money. I said, by the way, do you have season tickets? He said, oh, heavens, yes. We got a boatload of those because they don't fill the place up. So that's fine. I said, well, just give me the season tickets. because what
There
was
you
most
go.
important for me is getting the name and that we had this agreement. From that, and I should have brought this up, but and from that, what I did, I wrote a press release on this.
Yes, yes, yes.
Communication strategies, lands, and Nashville Ballet as a client. Then I called my buddy over at the National Business, National Business, sent it over to him. Boom, hit the newspaper. So now they're saying
Okay.
communication strategies has a National Ballet. That was what I was looking for. That was what I was working. So I think probably I'm going to say roughly about 2 weeks after that, I get a telephone call and make a long story short, somebody called me and I talked to the lady. I wound up getting a client that I worked for 7 years as a result of that newspaper column article. The other time was I had a second one of the PR presidents call me. She said, Peter, look, you have to go down. I said, this is something I think you can handle, but you're going to have to go down and pitch for it like everybody else. Well, to make a long story short, what happened was she told me that it was the National Opera. And they told me what operas it was. I said, oh, my goodness, let me stop and think about this because, I've never been to an opera, so how am I going to handle this? So I started thinking, I said,
Yes, yes.
uncharted territory.
So uncharted
what
territory.
I started thinking about is that, well, if I were the PR person at the opera, we know we've got the season tickets holders. What we need to do is get the people who don't come to the opera. So I'm saying, well, fine. What are operas about? So I started looking at the one of the first one I had to do was Carmen. So I started reading the story of Carmen. If you look at the story of Carmen, it's not about who wrote the opera and blah, blah, blah. It's about what the story is about. Carmen was, I guess, a husband stealer. That's basically what she was.
Basically, in simplest terms.
I said, hey, wait a minute.
Yes.
That's still going on today.
She was.
So I saying, hey, wait a minute. Let's talk about the fact that Carmen is a husband
in an opera.
All these other kind of things. This is what the story's about. And somebody said, oh, my goodness. So that caught on.
It is.
So next thing I know, now I've got another headline in the newspaper that Peter Woolfolk has National Opera.
So you've picked up a strategy and a play, and it just hit every single time.
It worked because
it worked
because I'm talking about
it's out of the box
and what his history is. Most people really don't give a damn about that because they're not there to see.
Hey, business rock stars! Got big PR plans for 2025? Then you need the 2025 PR Plan and Workbook. It's your step-by-step guide to owning the media spotlight, building buzz, and making big moves this year. And guess what? Early bird pricing is live right now, but it won't last long. So why pay more later when you can snag it now and save those extra coins for coffee runs during media pitch marathons? I don't know. Go grab it today because once it's gone, well, you'll be wishing you hit that buy button sooner. Let's make 2025 your breakout year. Early bird pricing ends soon. Visit brandincpr.com/resources.
Yes. So what is this about? It's like a movie. Well, this is the movie. I don't care who directed it or whatever it is. I want to see that movie. So those are the kinds of things. The bottom line to this is that you need to have some confidence in yourself. Find, again, how do I solve this particular problem? That's basically what the bottom line is. If you can do those two things, you're in very, very good shape and do quality work. Because as I said, I want people who are good at their game because part of my programming, if you will, a proposal is the quality of the people who will be doing the work. And knowing that I have the other lady came who still does work for me is she retired from Nissan's national headquarters. She ran their PR department over there. She works for me. And the one reason that I got her was because she knew about some of the work that I had been doing. Because one of the ladies that I talked to you about earlier, they knew each other because of the Nissan connection. So it's it's not
Gotcha,
because
gotcha,
that
gotcha.
you did some
Okay.
PR for the local homeless shelter. I mean, find nothing wrong with that, but that's not at the level I'm looking for that I need to do
Mm.
and compete with some of the people that are down here.
Oh.
Because now we've got some of the largest PR firms in the country, not headquartered here, but in the office in Nashville now. So you've got.
In
Well, it's
Nashville.
been a great journey, and starting the podcast really was not my idea. One of the people I used to work for, or work with, I should say, worked for the at the time was the largest PR firm here in Nashville, and we met because I came up with another idea back in 2010, I think it was, and I was on the board of the Tennessee Hispanic Chamber. I said, something tells me that the Hispanic population is going to grow, and I believe it should be, if the Hispanic Chamber wants to get some visibility, I think they should be the ones who get out and talk about the growth of the population of the Hispanic community and how are we going to do that. So we started sitting around and thinking about how to pull that off and have an event over there where we could charge people to come into. And we were lucky enough to get the guy from, oh my goodness, it's going to come to it. There's a major up in Princeton, New Jersey. I can't think of the name right now, who do surveys. It'll come. No, not Nielsen.
Are you talking about Nielsen? Nielsen?
It'll.
And it could be
No,
like
it's a
Survey
major
Monkey. That's a
organization. I can't think of the
tool,
name of it right now,
I
but
know that.
he was the vice president of this.
Pew
Pew Research. We
Research?
called him up. Right.
Okay. I was like,
He happened to be a Hispanic guy. I forget his name right now. And asked him if he would come down and talk about, this particular issue and how we can make it effective, blah, blah, blah. He agreed to it. We, gave him a gratuity, put him up, blah, blah, blah. And he was the keynote speaker. Because the other thing about this is that when you do something like this, you want to attract the right people. You got to have the right kind of folks making the presentations. So we did education, medicine, and small business. Looking at that. So we had 3 different panels. We had people from different parts of the country different parts of the state coming in. We got national coverage on that, bringing him in. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine at the time, he was the editorial editor for the Tennessee Hound here. I got him to have a direct connection to him so he could write a column about it, and he did. So those kind of things, boosted this up, and one of the universities here hosted it for us, free. I mean, when I say that, we had lunch and the presentations and so forth and so on, and the university paid for that because they got a lot of visibility out of it as well. So it's thinking about things and how can I solve this problem at a high level, and you got to be willing to have some sort of background, connect with the right people. If you want to join with them to get things done, fine, get it done. So I mean, I've had a great ride. I got so many stories. Let me get this other one because this one was really a big surprise for me.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was on the board of trustees for one of the local. You probably familiar with Cumberland University down the road from Nashville. So she asked me to go to a cocktail party down there. So I said, fine, I'll go. And the reason that I was looking forward to it is because the guy who was currently president at the time used to be head of the business department down there, and he had invited me down several times to speak to his class. So I hadn't seen him since he'd gotten to be president. So I said, fine, I'll go down and just say hello to Paul and all so forth and so on. So I got down there and found out it had something to do with the Supreme Court being down there and so forth. And said, well, what's going to happen? He said, well, the Supreme Court comes on campus, college campuses. The Tennessee Supreme Court comes on campus to talk to students, and they hold actual hearings here as a way of maybe hoping some students to decide to take up law as a career. I'm coming back and saying, wow, I'm just wondering about this. So I called a lady who oversaw the program. I said, by the way, has this ever gone to an HBCU campus in Tennessee? She says, no, but, we've been thinking about it. And I said, oh my goodness, okay. I said, well, would you have any problem if I see if I could reach, maybe find a president that might be interested in having the program come down? They said, oh, fine. I said, oh my goodness, this is getting better all the time. So I called the guy who I knew who oversaw an independent colleges. He said, well, I said, do you know a president that might be interested in having this on his campus? He says, yeah, I know a new guy. He's just been president. Matter of fact, I'm at a conference and he's here with me today. I said, well, have him call me. He called me back probably a couple hours later, and I told him, this is the conference at the Tennessee Supreme Court. It's called the Scales Program. The Supreme Court, something about legal education, goes on to try to encourage kids to consider law as a vocation. So I said, I'll be willing to come down and make a presentation on to you and your board so you can fully understand it, blah, blah, blah. He said, oh, fine. I'll set up a date, so forth. Understand now that I've never seen the program in action. I knew what it was called. I read something about it. I even Googled it. I got pictures of some other people over there. They're down there in the little robes and everything, kids up there and so forth and so on. The benefits the college is having is there, like I said, their students can come and see the court in action, so forth and so on. University is a big, prestigious operation, to have them there. So I read all I could about it, put together my Google thing, as I said, knowing I'd never been to one of these things before, hoping that they didn't have any real deep questions. That made my presentation. Here's what the Scales program is. They've been around from 1995. They've not been to an HBCU campus, blah, blah, blah. And be prestigious with Lane College down the road in Jackson, Tennessee. They said, wow, we'd like to have you do this. And I said, I said, just so you show you how confident I am, I want the first sentence in my contract to say, if I am unable to bring the Scales program to Lane College, you do not owe me a nickel. He said, get the contract. What did I have to lose?
Okay. Big stake, right. But big return.
Anyway, one of the members of the justices on the Supreme Court happened to live down there in Lane. So, I mean, they knew one another. And so there was a process. The process there is the president of the college has to write the letter to the Supreme Court and has to go through this particular judge. So we sat down, cobbled the letters together, blah, 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 and sent it on down there. And, it went through the process. And it's a long process. And quite honestly, it probably took about a year. But the bottom line is it finally came out because they came down there. Lane College lands Tennessee Supreme Court Scales program. Yes. So I got that. Now, talk about luck.
Wow. Win.
After I'm done with the board of directors and so forth, and they've gone, and the president said they're going to start working on the letter. I'm sitting down talking to the chief of staff. She says, well, by the way, we've got a radio station down here, and, we're not quite sure what to do with it. And I said, oh, really? I said, well, what are you doing now? She said, well, we've got a guy over there playing. He plays sort of oldies but goodies, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. I said, well, I'm the guy that put, smooth jazz on the Fisk University radio station. That has gone over. It's going to be very, very well. And now, because they get a much broader audience, that we're able to sell some spots on that. She said, oh. She said, well, could you put together a proposal for us? I said, sure, I'll put it together and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm going to put it together and so forth and so on. And maybe, and matter of fact, track down some of the other HBCUs that also had smooth jazz and listed them and so forth. Boom. That's when I know I had a contract. So, I really enjoyed it. I've had a lot of those experiences. Well, I don't know, but I'm going to find a way to get this done. That to me is, I just go, it's just vital. I just, I'm not going to go too far out of my lane, so to speak. But if it's something that I think that I can do, and I can partner with somebody to do it, I'm going to go after it, just like that. Video. As I said, I produced a video for Nashville International Airport. I got Barbara, one of the other ladies, to write it for me. And,
Wow.
matter of fact, as a result of that, they said, fine, could you take some of this and then squeeze it down, because we'd like to take this information and we want to present this information when we go to a conference to be able to show it. Another small contract out of that. So one thing leads to another. The bottom line, I guess I could say, is that if you're in public relations, first of all, try to be the best that you can be. Get the best possible people you can hire. Go after big contracts. Don't be afraid to do that, because you can always hire the people to do the things that you cannot do. But that's what really is going to make you a leader in this. As a result of some of the things that I had done, McNeely, Pickett, and Fox, who were the largest ones at the time, they called me up and said, we'd like to talk to you. And then what they wanted to do was they're going after when the city was getting ready to build this convention center, the Music City Center. At the time, it was the biggest contract in the city's history. I was on that team. And they came up as a result of them seeing the media exposure that I had gotten and the level of stuff that I had been doing with company, National Opera, the ballet, those kinds of things, and being visible.
Wow.
Being visible to people, and so they can see who you are and what kind of a person you are, and all those other kinds of things.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel like that has been kind of a key lesson for you and how you were able to navigate all of these experiences through the strategies that you developed? Is that kind of one of those key lessons that helped impact?
The thing about it is,
experiences?
let's sort of switch over to the podcast, for instance. Now, the podcast was not my idea. One of my colleagues suggested this to me.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
And she said, well, maybe you should look into it. And so I started looking up, and when I started reading about it, to me, as I said, well, wait a minute, the podcast really is no more than basically a radio show on the internet. I said, hey, wait a minute, I know radio.
Online. That's all it is. I tell people that all the time. Yes, it is radio. Isn't it wild that people really do say that? It's like, this is the new thing. It is literally radio online.
I said, well, I
Y'all
know
are just
radio.
doing radio.
No question about that. But then I started having to ask some other questions. Okay, what am I going to talk about?
There you go.
Where am I going to record it? How will people know that I'm here? All these kinds of things I had to start asking. How am I going to find people to talk to? So I had to work my way through all of those things before I made any sort of effort to start a podcast. And the other thing they also said, if you're actually going to make sure you're going to go forward with it, to set a start date. Well, I said, well, let me not do that until I can answer some of these questions. All right, where do I send it? All right, I can record something, but what do I do with it? And all those other kinds of things. What am I going to call the show? Blah, blah, blah. Where am I going to find guests? All these kinds of things.
The logistic.
So, my very first episode was me. I didn't have a guest. But the fact is, I had a target date. I set a target date. And all these other kinds of things. So I talked about, something about marketing, whatever it was. It was probably about 10 minutes. And my first place that I used was SoundCloud. Oh, it was free at the time. I said, fine, that free is good. I can live with that.
Free is a good start. As you build it up, free, I like that too.
At the time, I used to say, you probably can't see it here now, but I've got a 12-channel mixer here now because I've got a lot of other stuff that goes on. But I had a little itty bitty 2-channel mixer, and that, but at least I got the thing rolling. So I'm keeping saying to myself, how am I going to let people know I'm here? Because I could put it up on SoundCloud, and once in a while you got somebody says, okay, I liked your thing that you had. I had to decide on the open. What kind of music am I going to have? I mean, you heard the smooth jazz stuff I have on there. And the guy I have announcing is a British voice actor I found online. I had to, I think, to open and close, I sent over there. He sent it back. I liked it. So that's why I got that. But then I had my plan to begin to, how do I expand this, was I said, if I knew somebody in every state, I could call them up and have them on the show. And then they would let people know that they're on the podcast. And so that would help them. I could get to their audience through them. So that's what I started doing, getting people because if you listen to my podcast, everybody I talk about, where they are from.
Yes.
And to date, I have 49 people from 49 states. It's more, well, sometimes more than people from the same state, but from 49 states and 10 countries.
Yes.
Several of the people have called me up. One from Brazil, because I think sometime last year, a lady from Brazil sent a thing in, we like your show, could we be on it? I said, that's great. I didn't know what to talk about, so I sent her a note back and let's have a phone call, because I have no idea what to talk about. And what we agreed on is how people in Brazil do things differently. In terms of how PR people go about doing certain things. Hey, maybe that's interesting just to see the comparison between this. I ran across some new products that I saw. I tracked down the owners of some new PR products. One guy was in Israel. Called him up, got him on the phone about that. It was one of those things that, if you're going to write, you need to reach a newspaper reporter. His program will help you identify reporters to cover certain subjects on certain areas and blah, blah, all of those kinds of things. We talked about that. So it's just a matter of looking for those kinds of things. And does it make sense? And would people be interested? Here's another one that was really interesting. I think it was a couple of years ago. I got an email from a professor at George Fox University. Well, I'd never heard of George Fox, but anyway, I looked it up. It's somewhere in Seattle or Washington, somewhere out in that area. And she says, well, why don't you do a public affairs show about Christian public relations? I said, I'm saying to myself, Christian. So when I have an issue like that, I Google it. And sure enough, I found an article in Forbes magazine. Christian public relations is not so much about they do it in a different way, but the big issue is, suppose I'm a devout Christian and I have certain values, and I get assigned to a program or a project that bumps head with those values. How is an organization, a PR company, going to solve that? How are they going to deal with it? That's the sort of thing that this was about. And I invited another guy, local guys, to talk about the same, so we can cover this thing. That proved, and to this day, it is the largest episode download I've had since I've been on a podcast. It shocked me. I mean, I think within a day, I had something like 1,500 downloads on that. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's
those
incredible.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
Another lady sent me a message about, why don't you do a PR business about animals? And so I said, why? Here I go again. So Google it again. And sure enough, you do see, what's the name? There's a car company, Subaru, big on animals. Subaru, because not that they pitch it, but you see the fact that they've got animals and dogs, and they let you know that they're one of the biggest contributors to the Humane Society or something like that, animals. And according to the article, people
I did not know that.
Animals in commercials have a great warm, fuzzy feeling about the product, and a warm feeling about the people who produce the product. So it's that kind of thing. That was the second one. Not the second one, but that one went over very big as well. So a lot of times, some of the people who listen will send me notices about ideas that they might have, and it makes sense to me. I said, fine, let's go with it.
Yes. Yeah. Do you feel like that influenced your perspective of the PR industry, receiving like those diverse topics and areas of interest that aren't traditional, I guess, topics that you would normally just cover in this space?
It's very much out of the box.
It's very out of the box.
What is good to see is that there's somebody out there who can handle it, who's doing it. Because, they see all these kind of things. One lady, I think it was, I know what it was. I wanted to, I was looking for some of the states that I had not covered. And I'm thinking, I said, South Dakota. So anyway, I'm looking through online about South Dakota PR firms and so forth, and North Dakota PR firms, and I found, so I called them up and asked them, let's talk about how do you function out here. I mean, one guy was in North Dakota, and he said how many miles he has to drive every day because it's so sparse out there. Forget about the cold. Well, you can't forget about the cold, but
Yes.
it's sparse.
I mean,
And
the
yes, he
Midwest.
does have some clients, but yes, he has to drive. Same thing with the lady who was in South Dakota. We have to drive a lot of times because it's a wide open space, and this is what it is, and here's how we go about it. And the different levels of people. Sometimes they do work for the state government. Sometimes it might be the newspaper, or might have some headquarters of some organization there. But they get it done. So I just see a lot of different things that come down the pike of having a show.
I mean, that's awesome. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as you have spoken so much about just the diversity of the companies that you worked with, one thing that comes to mind for me is how do you tailor your approach to meet those unique needs of those specific very clients that you do have or that you're dealing with? Because it sounds like you've kind of touched on almost every industry. You've gotten into entertainment, you've gotten into government, you've gotten into nonprofit, now we're talking about, it getting into almost the animal space with some of the topics with podcasting. So how do you feel like you've been able to tailor that approach to meet the needs and the diverse needs of these new clientele that have appeared
the first
in
thing
this
I need to do
space?
is, what are you trying to accomplish? That's the first thing. What do you want the public relations to do for your organization here? Once this narrowed down to that, then we could begin to formulate some sort of a plan, and what is your expected outcome from, once you get this, what do you want the outcome to be? Like the opera, for instance. I didn't know anything about opera, but that wasn't their concern. Their concern was, how can we get people into these seats?
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I had a contract with the minor league baseball team here.
Okay.
And here's another thing that I did. Having been in politics, I got to know practically all of the black folks on the Nashville City Council. And when I was getting started, what I told them, because I had established a bit of a reputation about, first of all, for being a fiscal and a radio station. I told them, I'm starting up a business, and I'm going to here's what I will do.
Yes,
And it's not illegal. I will write your press releases for you for free. Because right now, there are 40 some odd people on the Metro Council, and there's only one person to write press releases. So I know yours are behind, blah, 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 all these other kinds of stuff. So I'll do yours for free. Now, what do I want in exchange? I'm asking you to open some doors for me. And all you got to do is, hey, here's Peter Woolfolk. He's a nice guy. He's in public relations. Just sit down and talk to him. You're not committed to do anything at all. I said, fine. So I got a whole lot of things to start writing. Right for one guy called me, one of the first to call me. He said, Peter, come up here. I got somebody I need you to talk to.
Yes.
I got up there. It's the general manager of the Sounds baseball team.
Okay.
So what was going on? Because the Sounds wanted to build a new stadium. This is not the current ownership, but the one before them. They wanted to build a new stadium. And now you've got the black members of the caucus want to know, well, what are you doing in terms of having some black contractors involved in the building of the stadium? Well, obviously the guy didn't have an answer for him. So, and as a result, they weren't going to vote for him to get this thing passed. So I sat down and talked to him, and he said, I haven't been able to do this. I haven't been able to do that. I haven't been able to do everything. I don't know who to call, who to reach. And so I said, stop. You don't need to do this. What you need to do is partner with somebody to do this. I happen to know the president of the NAACP. Why don't we'll get you have a meeting with them and make it their responsibility to hire a minority, to at least identify the minority contractors you can talk to, and you can select from those people. They said, okay. The Metro Caucus liked it. Boom. so they got a contract. I got a contract to do that. So Everybody
Yes,
wins. It's the same
everyone
thing. I don't care
wins.
who I have done work for. It is, what do you want to accomplish? Because I've done work for the
Yes.
airport. I'll give you another
Yeah.
example. The airport has this program. Most of them do. We want to reach out to as many minority and small business or small business, minority business as we can to let them know about the things we do at the airport. Well, what they did was every meeting they had was in Nashville. So if I'm up in Clarksville or Lebanon, do I really want to drive all the way into Nashville? So I said, well, look, why don't you give me a contract? Here's what I'd like to do. Of all the contiguous counties that touch Nashville, let me go to that Chamber of Commerce and see if they'd be willing to host the meeting for the airport to come in and explain to their members how this works. And that the airport, if the chamber want to have a breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the airport would pay for that breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And everyone said, sign me up. So now I get a contract to go sit down. The president, all of them, every one of them. So, it's those kinds of things. What do you need to have done? And that's one of the things that I've learned in the process of going through this. That, sometimes you can create business for yourself. I've got a deal now that I was on the National Academy of Science. They had a airport a program about how airport are going to deal with climate change and all this other sort of stuff. And part of what we found out is that you have some environmental groups that are encouraging people not to fly airplanes, because airplanes, for the most part, when they flying, they discharge a lot of gas into the atmosphere. So they're encouraging some people not to fly. Not a big deal right now, but it has happened. A couple of even smaller airports have closed and so forth and so on. So I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness. Once then I talked to people up in Washington about it when I was at a meeting up there. Once this report is finished, can I get a copy of this report? Because I'd like to make a presentation to the National International Airport, to their board of directors, and give each one of the board of directors a copy of this report. So I talked to the president of the airport about it. He was open to the idea. The report just came out. I just got a copy yesterday, so I need to see if I can get 15 more, because here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a presentation to the airport. So here's the report. Here's what it says. Here you can outline all the things that has been done, and you can have a press conference and say, well, fine, here's what we're doing. This report just came out, and here's what we're doing to make sure we help have a clean atmosphere. Then what I wanted to do was to have at that press conference people in the aviation industry who have actually done things. And like, for instance, you probably saw in the news, there are helicopters with motors driven by battery. So the gasoline is not there anymore. They're not discharging the gas with some gasoline. It's battery-operated engines, helicopters, and some small planes. I would like to have them or representatives from them at the press conference to talk about, yes, this is, as a matter of fact, a new passenger plane is being, American Airlines signed a contract sometime last year with a new passenger plane. Has, I forget all the details, but, all the stuff that comes out of the airplane has been reduced substantially. To now, they might not come, but can we use a video, blah, 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 all these kinds of things. So that's what I want to do, is that I want to get somebody, because I've talked to the president. He's open for getting that booklet. And then I think that we could have him have a press conference to say, here's how we're going to do what it is we do. And here's the benefits to you. If I think I can get a pretty good chunk of change out of putting that press conference together. So it's seeing opportunities and creating them for yourself.
Yes. Exactly. And making it work for you as opposed to the other way around. But you have to be thinking outside of the
willing
box to
it,
really
and
get
be
to
willing
that
to,
for
see
anything
the
to ever
opportunity. How
happen.
can I best approach it? Who do I need to have involved?
Yes.
What questions might come down the pike that I can't answer? Who can I get that can answer? Those kinds of things. So a lot of times it's about partnering. And it's fine. It's not you can decide how you're going to split. What are we going to charge? How are we going to handle it? All those other kinds of things. But it does take some willingness and some self-confidence and willingness to go get it done.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I mean, goodness. There's so many important tips that you've given today that just, I mean, I know the listeners are going to find so much value in everything that you have, and just in your experiences alone. It's so important and it's so needed, especially in the current climate that we have. So I want to, again, just picking your brain here. How do you feel like PR has evolved over the last
Oh,
25
absolutely.
years? Or do you think it has evolved at all? Because I know earlier we were talking about podcasts, and
Right.
really podcasts, those are radio. It's just online. So it's not
Right.
really different as much as we've changed the name and label, right? So how do you think PR has evolved, or
Oh,
if it has
absolutely. Well,
evolved
podcast
over
is
the
just a
last
small
25
part of it
years?
because there's some PR firms. I look through some magazines. I see that
Yes.
there's some PR firms that have their own podcast. Several. Matter of fact, I had one guy from he was somewhere in
Yes.
Wisconsin. He has a PR firm and he has a podcast. And what he does, he brings his clients on to his PR podcast. That's one of the things that he does, or he helps them create their own podcast.
Mm.
So there are a lot of different ways for that. I showed you
Mm.
the thing that came out the other day. I just got an email
Yes.
the other day. I think it's Feedstock. There's the top 70
Yes.
podcasts around the country. Well, how many PR podcasts are there? There are boatload of them out there.
Mhm.
And the fact that I was number 13 out of 70, I mean, I'm very, very
Yes.
happy about that. But if you want to start a podcast, then find how do you make your
Yes.
podcast grow? How do you like any other podcast, and who do you get on it? So those kinds of things. So, and the fact that now we talk briefly about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is all over. I mean, it's all over
Mhm.
public relations, and it depends upon how you use it. I just did a
Mhm.
recording yesterday with the president of
Yes.
the International Public Relations Institute. Um, and one of the things that I do for my podcast is that
Ooh, okay.
now that it's done, AI is going to generate my transcript for me. Those kinds of things. It makes it so simple. Okay, here's speaker one, speaker. I just have to go in and stick the names in there.
Yes.
It also writes my the pieces
Yeah.
for whether I want to put it on Facebook or X or some of those. It writes a little scenario there for me, so I don't have to do all of that anymore. It makes it very, very simple for me. You've got the other measurement tools.
Mhm.
What is the sentiment? What is the sentiment? What do people feel about my product? Well, they've got programs that can tell you what people are saying about your product. Those kinds of things. So it's about what is your space?
Mhm.
Who are you working with? What do they want to know about their programs or their products or things along those lines? Or what do people think about their product? All that kind of stuff. So you have to be able to do that or hire
Mm.
somebody that does that. I think PR still has its place here. It's going to continue to have its place. Um, the fact is,
Mm.
we've got to keep up with the things that people do, what people need, solve people's problems, um, and keep them
Yep.
happy.
Yes. Absolutely. What advice would you give really today's PR professional to stay ahead of some of these trends and really industry trends, like the inclusion of AI, like the expansion of new media and adding more digital platforms into the mix of what has been
Well, again,
traditionally done? What advice
it's
would
going
you
to go
give
back
them?
to what is it that you need and what do your clients need. Um, because and the other thing that's important is data. You got to collect data, about what people like, what they don't like, how they go about these kinds of things.
Mm,
What interests them. Because one of the things I also looked at is that who are my listeners? What are the age group? And my age group are mostly millennials and Gen Z people. And so what do they like? Well, one of the things that they like, they want to find out about the
mhm,
companies. What are you doing about the environment? So on occasions, I have to have companies on who can talk about what they're
mm,
doing about the environment because I know that there's that audience out there. 70 to 80% of my listeners are females. So that I'm going to have a large quantity of female guests on there to talk
yeah,
about whatever the particular issue is. So that's how I go about looking at some of the things there.
yeah.
Um, it also depends on what your clients want. What kind of information are they trying to get from their particular project? Well, you can do that several different ways, depending upon what the project is. And sometimes you can sit down and talk to people. You can just have maybe a meeting of some kind. Well, what do you think about A, B, C, and D? And maybe you can have polls out that people can take. Can they call in? Matter of fact, because you can also put artificial intelligence on your website to take polls that you can call in, and maybe a robot will say, okay, fine, tell us what your concern is, blah, blah, blah. And with the artificial intelligence can say, well, did you know, the robot can respond, well, did you know we're doing A, B, C, and D? Those kinds of things. So it depends upon what it is the organization, wanting the PR agency wants and needs, and they got to develop messages and systems and so forth to help achieve that particular goal, and what the client is looking for, and what do we need to help them achieve this particular goal. Is it going to be public speaking? One of the other things I think is important is, do you have an emergency communications plan? They call it crisis communication. Crisis communication, you don't let inexperienced people step out there, particularly if it's a large organization. I have seen too. One of my clients had a big mess. And when I say that, we had one of these smaller private colleges, and they had invited a radio person over. It's one of those colleges that teaches, I think this particular course they're involved was, what is it, phlebotomy, when you're drawing blood or something like that. I figured that phlebotomy. So what had happened was they had him over there, and they were taping his interview while the students were, administering, showing how they would did the phlebotomy thing. Well, obviously the lady that they had over there was very experienced, because when they were administering the drug and so forth, the radio announcer, oh my goodness, oh God, it must hurt awful. That must be awful. How could it hurt so bad? And here you are, he's live on the radio now, talking about the school that you're trying to get people to come to, talking about that must be painful. So I showed that because the guy who's president we met, he invited us over to help him on this, and I showed him, look at what's happening here. The people, and it's live, the people in radio are hearing this. They're not going to come here. They're not going to want, because you need people to come in for your students to work on. Having them hear this is bad news. We got to fix this. The first thing that should have happened is that the lady who was doing the communications should have talked to the radio announcer first, asking him if he's comfortable with doing this. Explain to him how things work, those kind of things. So rather than, and if he was the wrong person, can we get somebody else to do this? Because once it's out there, it's too late. I mean, I hate to say this, but they actually were around up firing her because it was a mess. So get the right people, get some experienced people, and make sure that you're doing the things that get you to the goals you want to get, making sure that everything is above board, getting you to the goals that you want, that you've got good, solid, straight people to do work for you. Make sure making sure your clients' requests are reasonable. Don't ask for things that don't make a lot of understand. So maybe you don't fully understand how this works or what the consequences could be. Prepare ahead for things. Make sure that the head of your organization also, two things: understands the people who are working for you. Are they happy and they satisfied doing the work? If not, why not? And if they're not, what are you going to do about it? Get some visibility in the public, in the community. Get involved in the community, so that they'll have people who see you doing things in the community have a much higher appreciation of you and your organization, and it could also bring business in for you. Those kinds of things. But artificial intelligence is here to stay. How can we use it? How can we apply it? There's so many different parts to it. You might not use them all, but how can we use the best question to ask is, what do we need? What do we need here? And if it's, as a chat GPT is one, I'm sure it can help me write some things, but then once I get it, I'm going to go in and change it and make it sound like I wanted to change, but it has saved me some time. You've got all the other things that are out there as well. Do we actually need this now, or will we need it later?
And there you go. And there you have it. Well, goodness gracious, I feel like you should add this onto your title, being a problem solver. People have a problem, they come to you and you generate solutions. I mean, goodness gracious, you're right, right. But that's incredible and that's important. That's something that as PR professionals, as leaders, that's exactly what we should be doing in our roles is how are we solving the problem? And at its most basic level, what it doesn't matter the industry in business, that's what it comes down to. And whether or not anyone's going to work with you is do you solve my problem? Because I need help. If you can't do it, then they're going to find someone else that can. But ultimately, it's very simple. The formula is can you solve a problem? That's it. And then you go from there. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mm, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It all has to be cleared up right out the gate in order to really get the results that you're looking for. So, yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Well, before we wrap up, I definitely want to ask you, how can people get in contact with you if they're interested in getting more insight, working with you, finding out more about the podcast, and tell us, some things that you have going on in the near future that we can support. Okay. Mm, okay. Hmm. Hmm. Yes. Mm, yes. Mhm. Mm, yes. Irrelevant. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm, yeah. Mhm. I think that's the perfect way to close. Whatever you do, be the best at what you can. Hey, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for joining me today and having this conversation. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I feel like there's going to be a part 2 because there's still so much that we can unpack in our conversations, especially related to the communications industry. I love it. Well, thank you again so much for this. And definitely, if you are just now tuning in, make sure you like, follow, subscribe the Brandinc PR podcast. And we'll see you next time.